author of Adnan's story, and her newest book, Fatty Fatty Boom Boom, Rabia Chaudry. We met Rabia as she tirelessly fought to free Adnan over the past 23 years, who was the subject of the hit Serial podcast and her HBO docuseries, The Case Against Adnan. Last September, Team Adnan experienced a major win when former State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby dropped the charges, but as of last week, they've been reinstated, and it's just left all of us confused. Rabia, please welcome and please let us know what's going on.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, this was I mean, in 2019, the highest court of Maryland also reinstated Adnan's conviction after two courts had overturned it. But when you're at the point where the state's attorney drops charges and there no longer are any charges, pursuant to which you can reinstate a conviction, nobody could expect something like this to happen. And just to explain to folks what happened in September 19th of 2022, last year, there was a hearing held in the circuit court in Baltimore on a motion to vacate his conviction. So Marilyn Mosby, her office, the prosecutor, brought a motion to the court and said, we are here to move to vacate the conviction. Okay. At that hearing, the victim's family, the brother, was represented by an attorney, and they filed their own motion. And the motion was to postpone the hearing and say, we need more time because we should have had enough notice to be able to be present for the hearing. They had been told about the motion about a week prior, and the family lives in California. They did not appear for it. They were communicated with the entire week before the hearing, and they again told the state's attorney that they would be appearing via Zoom. They would not be appearing in person. But the day of the hearing, they said, no, we want to appear in person. So they filed this motion. The judge did not grant the motion, but what she said was, we're going to recess the hearing and we're going to wait to give you enough time. The victim's brother was at work, to give you enough time to get home and get on a Zoom call. So we waited that day in court for Lee Young, the brother, to get home, get on a Zoom call. He spent about 40 minutes giving his statement. And after that, the court ruled on the motion that the state's attorney brought, and vacated Adnan's conviction and released him. Now, the motion that the family filed to postpone the hearing, because it was denied, they decided to appeal that denial to the Intermediate Appellate Court in Maryland. And that's the court that just ruled that they're going to grant the motion, and they're going to send the case back down to the circuit court to do the hearing all over again, and give the family enough notice to come and be there in person. The problem is, so they said, we're going to reinstate the conviction. The problem is there's no charges, because a few weeks after,
Right. That's why we're confused.
that's the confusing part. And that's the part that I literally haven't slept in 2 days thinking about, because what they did was not only reinstate the conviction and say the hearing's got to be done over, they didn't touch the merits of the hearing. They didn't say that the judge made a wrong decision by granting the conviction to be vacated, or there was anything wrong with the state's attorneys. They said this is just a pure technicality. The family has a right to be present. But here's what's interesting. They also said the family has a right to be present, but they don't have the right to be heard. So,
So that's the other part. So you get to come to the hearing, so you just want to be there to watch.
right. And I actually think that if I represented the family or victims' interests in any case in Maryland, I would be concerned by this ruling, because I would say, I want to protect the right for a family to be heard at a hearing like this versus a family to be physically present. And I think that's a really problematic part of this. But the bigger problem to me is the fact that they said, well, there aren't any charges because Marilyn Mosby dropped the charges. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that was a nullity. It never happened. We are nullifying her actions.
That's
And
illegal, right?
how how can they do that? How can they make a decision on the actions of a state executive, on an issue that's not even before the court? This is completely outside of their authority. I don't think there's any legal authority for them to do this. I am just scratching my head, because that means they can undo the executive action of any state official, period, and just say it never happened. Now, these kinds of things, for example, people have asked, well, you've had the US Supreme Court and other and federal courts decide on whether or not, for example, the action of the Biden government or the Trump government was legal. Yeah, but that's on an issue before the case. That's an issue that's being litigated, right? Nobody, this was not even an issue before the court of their own volition. They're like, we're going to independently. So, and beyond that, they also made up their own remedies. They made up arbitrarily the victim's family should have X amount of like none of this is in regular. It's not part of statutes. There's no regulation around it. It is such a deeply troubling ruling for anybody doing post conviction work or innocence work because you can work for decades, not just get a conviction overturned and get somebody released, get the charges dropped, and a court can arbitrarily say, no, we're just going to reinstate everything. It undoes everything the circuit court did. It undoes the investigation the state's attorney's office did for a year.
And you're just like you're spending money for what? Is it because it's popular? Because the story behind it? How much does the popularity play into what's happening right now?
I think it's played a big role in it. And, it's one of those double-edged swords that we couldn't get movement on the case without all this attention.
Absolutely.
But all this attention has brought out everybody's egos, right? So all the players, the legal players in this case, the prosecutors, the judges, like everybody's got this invested interest. And, Maryland is not a huge place. It's like everybody's got connections. They've got animosities. I also think that and I talked a little bit about this when I did my live to explain this on Instagram the other day. Marilyn Mosby has had vendettas against her by people for like years now. People are out to get and undo what Mosby's done just because it's Mosby. And that's not fair to the defendant in the case, right? Like, and he's not the only person she's exonerated. There's like 12 other people, right? And then since then, Ivan Bates has been in office, and he's like, there's been exonerates come through his office. Keith Davis Jr. Recently, and nobody else is getting this treatment. No other exoneree in this country has gotten this kind of treatment.
What people don't really understand, what I think they really, really, really need to understand on a greater level is that Adnan is a victim.
Yeah.
And I think that people miss that in the conversation. This man spent a huge chunk of his life in a place where he shouldn't have been.
Most of his life.
Most of his life in a place where he shouldn't have been, and still forced to deal with the trauma of, the healing he had to go through after it actually happened in relation to losing a friend and everything else that goes with that. So I think, people need to understand that.
His family has been victimized. It's not just him and Lee's family. Adnan's family has been victimized. His parents were so sick. The whole family fell apart. Adnan was 17 at the time. He spent 23 years in prison. He spent more time in prison than he did outside. And now that he's gotten out, and for a juvenile life sentence shouldn't be beyond 25 years anyways. They wanted him to die in prison. So even if you think he's guilty, which they've got what's mind-boggling to me is in September, the Baltimore police has DNA evidence that they need to make an arrest in this case. You know what I mean? Like, why isn't that investigation moving forward? I want to know what's happening on that front because I feel like with this case, that's what it's going to take to finally end the ordeal for Adnan is that the actual killer has to be caught.
What hurts me more than anything is my best friend just came home from 16 years nonviolent drug crimes, and to see his smile and to see him being with his kids and family getting readjusted. And then I was so happy when I was shocked. We all was shocked when we first saw the tweets and the news and the headlines, come across when we found out that Adnan was coming home. And then to see that he's working and being readjusted, and just the photos I've seen via your page, it felt me up in like a warm way, because I'm like, that brother's gonna have a life, and he's gonna have some experiences, and he's gonna have some good times. And it makes me sick that people don't really they can't even just adjust or attach to that on the human side.
Yeah. It's a very cruel and arbitrary ruling. It really is in so many ways. And for what? For us to we have two options. Either we do the hearing over, like the court has said, and I gotta make this clear. I have missed one hearing in 23 years on Adnan's case, one. And that was actually the hearing on this issue that took place in front
Mhm.
of the Court of Appeals. This is the only time I did not go to a hearing. And that's because my father just passed away, and I've just really been just kind of struggling to, keep it together myself. And in 23 years, I never missed a hearing. And the victim's family has never attended a hearing.
Mm.
That is the truth. And so this is, to me, even if they're given a month's notice, I don't believe they're going to appear. I don't believe they're going to exercise the right that the court has just granted them. Why would they come in from California so they can't even speak? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any
But
sense at all.
right, but so now our options are we do the hearing over just like the court says, and or we appeal it to the next appellate court in Maryland. And I don't, these courts, that's the court that reinstated his conviction in 2019. I don't think they care about the fact, I don't think they care about the issues. If you read this opinion, it's like 87 pages. I feel like the first 60 pages are a recital of facts from the trial in 99 that are trying to convince anybody reading it that he's actually guilty. That's what it's about. Like, they haven't, and anything that Marilyn Mosby raised in September, advocating for his innocence, the court said allegedly. They use that language over and over. Allegedly, there's a Brady violation. Allegedly, his constitutional right was violated, but not that they accepted as fact. So we could appeal it. It could go up to the Maryland Court of Appeals. It could go up to the U.S. Supreme Court. But in the end, Adnan's going to be hanging in the balance for years as we go up the appellate chain. So what's easier is just to do the hearing over. But what that means is that this ruling is precedent. Like, we have set this really dangerous precedent that,
Dangerous.
yeah, that can not only be used in Maryland, but can be used across the country by other courts to say, well, okay, you exonerated this guy. We're gonna reconvict him. It's insane.
So Marilyn Mosby is not the state's attorney anymore. If she
Right.
was still the state's attorney, would this be going on?
I think so.
Okay. And
But although what she could do is say, okay, well, if you said that me dropping the charges were a nullity, I'm just going to drop them again. Ivan Bates can do
right.
that. He could be like, well, I'm going to just drop them all over again. I don't know if he would make a move that, because, his office has to deal with these courts and judges. Is he going
Mhm.
to make a move that aggressive? Kind of, or is he going to be like, let's just do the hearing over and we're going to end up with the same result probably anyways and just move on?
So what do you think the big next steps are going to be for you, for Adnan, for the whole entire team to combat this?
Look, Adnan is so well represented. He has an incredible attorney. Erica Suter has been his counsel for the last 4 years, and she became the executive director of the Innocence Project in that duration. So he's literally represented by the Innocence Project right now. He has a great support team. We have great investigators. All the pieces are in place. For him, I told Adnan on the day the ruling came out, I said, keep living your life. Keep living your life. Don't worry about this. All the people that we need to take care of business are in place. He went to work the next day. He's fasting. It's Ramadan. He's just doing his thing. And he's sending me pictures. He's like, I'm living my life, like you said. And I said, good, live your life.
Good.
And that's what he should do. We don't anticipate at all that Ivan Bates would make a move to like actually rearrest him and reincarcerate him. The ruling also doesn't become a mandate for 60 days. So, I think his team is gonna make a final decision about whether we're gonna appeal this or we're gonna do the hearing over. I'm inclined to want to just get this over with and do the hearing over, but I
Mhm.
do worry about the precedent, and I don't know if there'd be another opportunity to challenge it. It would just kind of hang out there because I don't think this will ever happen again to another to another defendant.
Yeah, I think the thing that's going to stick out most, and this is why a lot of us, what we don't understand is what you said. You get to do this all over again to just not be able to say anything. So if you can't say anything, I think sometimes people get it mixed up, like when someone's up in front of the parole board, and then like the families get to come back and
Yep.
and talk about how their lives have been since whatever may have occurred. But this isn't that. This is something totally different, and I think that's what threw everyone else off. So thanks for clearing that up. And I heard you say you were you lost some sleep, so we want to make sure you're taking care of yourself too.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, like it's been this last 6, 7 months has been like probably the greatest emotional roller coaster because a lot happened. Adnan got out, and I kind of couldn't celebrate. My dad was in hospice and then he passed just 3 months ago.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And he was like the most important person in my life. And so my book came out. It was just like the book tour is like up and down, up and down. And I'm like, can we finally just celebrate Adnan being home? Can you let us do that, state of Maryland? It's like if it's not the police, it's the prosecutors. If it's not the prosecutors, you got the judges. Like, can people just leave this poor man alone? He's in his 40s now. Give him the years he has left. Just leave him alone already.
How can supporters help?
I think I people are outraged by this. I don't know if it would be helpful, but I think it could be helpful to contact the state's attorney's office and say, listen, like this is outrageous. This is a travesty, and we really hope to see that your office continues to support the exoneration of this man.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.